Do you ever feel like you need to rebrand or refresh your brand like once a year just to keep up with how quickly your business is growing and evolving? I have been there too. In fact, I've rebranded multiple times over the last 8+ years that I've been in business. And every single one has taught me something new about what branding actually is and how it can really make or break your business. In this episode, I'm going to walk you through every evolution of my brand from the very beginning all the way to where we are today, and how you can learn what really matters before you go into hiring a designer or overhauling your website. Welcome to the Six-Figure Brand Podcast, where each week we're pulling back the curtain on what it really takes to build a six-figure business as an online service provider. I'm your host, Morgan. I'm a branding expert, online agency owner, mom of 2, and military spouse, and I'm obsessed with helping entrepreneurs like you understand the ins and outs of branding so that you can use it to grow your business without sacrificing your sanity. Whether you're just starting out or focused on scaling, we're diving into everything you need to build a profitable and sustainable online business. Let's get to it. Today, I am pulling back the curtain on every single rebrand and refresh that I've done since I started my business back in 2016. We are talking not just about visual changes like colors and fonts, but also the strategic shifts, mindset changes, mistakes, and realizations of things I wish I had done differently. Because here's the thing. Rebranding is not just about looking better. It's about feeling more aligned with your work, your audience, and the direction that your business is going. And spoiler alert, your brand should actually evolve over time. Doesn't mean that you've got it wrong. It means that you're growing, and that's what we want to see. So whether you're on your first brand, your 10th, or somewhere in between, I hope that this episode helps you understand what to change, what to keep, and how to make your brand work for you at every stage of business. This episode is not going to be just a chronological recap of the history of Spect & Co. If you want that, you can go back to episode 1, which is my story of how I got on a business, and it literally goes year by year of every single thing that I did and how we got to where we are today. But I really want to focus on brand specifically. So when I first started freelancing in 2016, branding was not really on my radar. I was working a full-time job and just wanted to make a few extra bucks, maybe pay off my student loans faster, pay for like a vacation or something. Honestly, I did not put that much thought into it. I set up a super basic portfolio website, made a profile on Upwork, and started applying for jobs and got a few pretty quickly. So as far as my brand goes, I didn't even have a business name. I literally was just operating under my own name, which at the time before I was married was Morgan Stapp. I didn't have really like a super defined color palette. I had no logo, no brand fonts. I think I just chose like a website template and kind of ran with that and uploaded my portfolio. There was not any brand voice or messaging or strategy. It was just, here's what I can do and here's my hourly rate. And that's kind of the end of it. So I think the lesson here is that when you're just getting started, it's fine to just kind of duct tape it together and not have a full brand. But also don't confuse the idea of, well, I'm doing good work for people with I'm building a brand, because that's not necessarily the case. I was kicking butt for the clients I was working with, but I wasn't really doing anything to establish myself as an expert or build upon my expertise to create a brand for myself at that time. And that was fine until I was ready to kind of evolve into the next version of myself as a designer. So probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 months into the freelancing thing, I kind of started to realize like, okay, this could be a thing and I should probably create a business and feel more legit. So I switched from just operating under my own personal name to Morgan Stapp Design, and I kind of created a website that had a little bit of a brand. It wasn't a great one. I had a logo that was like this rough kind of scripty font, and it had some mountains in it and some watercolor because the watercolor branding trend was huge then. And basically was like, okay, here's kind of the services I offer. And then I just listed out every single design task that I was capable of doing. So I said logos, PDFs, websites, social media graphics, just whatever. I was getting closer at that point to having some kind of a brand, in the sense that I was now marketing myself a little bit on social media versus just Upwork. And I was kind of trying to make sure that my social media content I was posting was at least visually aligned with my website, but I still was not doing any of that strategically. I literally was like, well, I like this font and I like purple and black and white for a color, so let's just roll with that. And that was okay. It was definitely a step up from where I was, and it started to help me feel like a business owner, which was really important. At some point over the next year, I joined a community / coaching program thing. And remember, this is in 2016. 2018. So the online business landscape was a lot different than it is now. Joined that group program. I met a lot of great people. My friend Liz, who I had on the podcast a couple months ago, I met in that group. So no regrets as far as joining the group goes. However, at one point they had like an upsell for branding and websites. And they were like, we'll design your brand and build you a website for, I think it was like $2,000 or something, which now is not a huge investment, but to me at the time was like a huge deal. But I was reaching a point where things kind of felt stagnant. Like I wasn't getting a ton of new clients and I really wanted to grow my business because I was starting to think, okay, maybe I could turn this into a full-time thing. And I think in hindsight, I was kind of looking for something to solve that problem for me. And I thought, okay, well, if I get a brand and a website that looks amazing, then all these clients will just come flocking to me because the business that was offering that had a huge following. And I thought, okay, well, if I just have them do it for me, then I'll have what they have. That was not the case. So the brand that they built me was pretty. And there are still some small elements of that brand that have kind of survived all of these later evolutions. But it wasn't very strategic. So they just kind of asked me like, do I like this? Do I like that? What colors do I like? And built that way. And it did feel very me, but I don't think it really spoke to my clients. And I also don't think that it showcased what my brand needed to showcase in order to grow my business the way I was hoping that it would. At that time, I also was convinced to switch my website from Squarespace to Showit. That was when Showit was like just starting to get really big. And spoiler alert, I hate Showit. I thought that, oh, well, it'll offer me so much more like design capability and it'll be prettier and yada, yada. And it was beautiful, but using it for me personally was just a nightmare. And I pretty quickly switched back to Squarespace and rebuilt everything, which was annoying because I felt like I just spent all this money on this website and now I'm scrapping it. But that was also a big lesson in kind of trusting myself to do things my way. And just because everyone else loves Showit and it works great for them, and to be clear, it doesn't mean that it has to be for me. And that's fine. So I think the big lesson here is that a brand that just looks nice and that is based around what you like is probably not going to really move you towards your business goals without any strategy behind it. And you will probably outgrow it again pretty quickly. So that was late 2017. At the end of 2018, I left my corporate job. I think it was October 18th, 2018 was my last day at my 9-to-5. That was wild that I had built my business up to the point that I could do that. And again, more details on that in episode 1 of the podcast. Took November and December off because my husband and I got married. We honeymooned over the holidays, whatever. Came back to work in like 2019 and kind of had a little bit of an identity crisis of like, oh my gosh, my business and my brand do not fit me anymore. So remember at the time I was still operating as Morgan Stapp Design, but now I've gotten married and my name is not Morgan Stapp anymore. It's Morgan Specht. And I thought that wouldn't be a big deal to me. I was like, whatever, it's fine. Plenty of business owners don't change their business name whenever they get married. But I very quickly was like, oh my gosh, I hate this. This feels so like weird and clunky to me. So I knew I wanted to change the name. I also thought, okay, well, this is probably a good opportunity to kind of refresh my visuals a little bit. Now that I'm full-time in business, I really want to step it up and like feel and look like a legit business. So rather than just switching to Morgan Specht Design, I kind of wanted to be a little more strategic about it this time. And how I landed on Specht & Co. was that while I was still at that time a solopreneur, I knew that someday I would probably want to grow into an agency or at least have a small team. And so the & Co. would kind of allow me to do that without it feeling like another weird disconnect, right? Of, oh, well, I'm hiring Morgan Specht, but actually she has all these people working for her. So the point there was kind of to like give me room to grow into it. And so far we are 6-7 years later, and that has worked out really well. So I'm glad that I made that decision. The next big change I made was I completely overhauled my logo. So previously I'd had like some mountains and a pretty font, which was something that I loved. And like my Pacific Northwest roots are super important to me. And I love to show that off whenever I can, but it didn't really have anything to do with business. And I love whenever I can create a logo that has some symbolism about like the business or the business owner and also is applicable to what they actually do or even just the fact that they run a business. So I created, and maybe I'll find it and put it in the blog post version of this episode, this really cool and creative woodpecker logo. So I turned the ampersand of the font that I was using into a woodpecker. And I know you're thinking, why on earth would you choose a woodpecker? So backstory here. Specht means woodpecker in German. My husband and I had just got back from our Europe/Germany honeymoon. And so that was kind of like on my mind. And I started looking up like, what's the symbolism of woodpeckers? And I learned that they symbolize resilience, hard-headedness, perseverance, all of the things that it takes to be a successful business owner. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. I did keep a lot of the colors that previous business had created for me when they designed my brand and just like added a few. And then I had this, it's kind of cringy now, but I loved it at the time, this like paint splattery kind of look in some of my brand elements. So now we had a new name, a refreshed palette, some kind of new visuals, a totally new logo and fonts, and I felt a lot better about moving forward in my business. Like I had, for the first time, like a real brand that actually felt like, not just felt like Morgan, but felt like Morgan, the business owner and designer. So I think the lesson here, and this is the hardest thing as a brand strategist and designer, is that the most successful brands are part personal and they're part professional. And finding that happy medium between creating something that feels like you and also does speak to your ideal client is a tough nut to crack. And that's where investing in a professional, I think, can really be helpful because it's just hard. And I think that with this version of my brand, so 2019, 2020 version, was the first time that I kind of started to understand how I could do that as a designer. So I kept that look and feel for a couple of years. I think it was like late 2020, 2021, before I kind of started to feel like, okay, I want something different. I felt like I had outgrown kind of the paint splatter look and some of the more illustrated, like, I don't want to say juvenile, but I guess that is how it felt to me, design style of some of the things I had going on. And I wanted something that just felt a little more polished and refined because, to be completely transparent, I wanted to raise my prices and I didn't feel like the brand that I had really justified the level of investment that I was wanting for the work that I was doing. I also started to realize that I was getting a lot of clients who were pretty indecisive about what they wanted. And this was kind of the first indication to me of, okay, I need to like actually dig into strategy for myself and for my clients more. So I started doing a lot of reading and researching and gathering client feedback. I read a handful of books, which I will link in the show notes. Highly, highly recommend. Start with Why, Building a Story Brand, and Brand Brilliance is a good one if you're going to DIY your brand, like do the design yourself. If not, I would say don't bother with it. And then I also did a brand strategy like course that really dove deep, which I will also link in the show notes. I believe it was called Brand Strategy Masters. I'll have to find out, but I'll get you a link for that also if you really want to get nerdy about brand strategy. But so I did tons of research and learning, like for probably like 6 months. That was my sole focus. I gathered tons of client feedback. I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I printed out and sat down in my office and highlighted with a purple highlighter close to like 300 pages of client intake forms and feedback forms. So I was looking at what are they saying before they work with me and then what are they saying after they work with me. And this really is where the standout brand strategy system kind of started to be born. It's evolved a lot in the last few years, but this was the first time that I started to kind of figure out, okay, how do I want to do strategy? What's my unique take and what's going to work best for me and my clients? And then I went through that process myself. So I did a pretty significant visual rebrand. I changed all of the fonts, most of the colors, completely changed my logo, and really shifted my brand tone and positioning to start leading with strategy a little bit more and also to start attracting like those higher end, more established businesses. So as far as the logo goes, that's when I created the logo that I have currently. I retired the woodpecker, which was sad. I would love to bring him back in some new, fresh way someday down the road. But this time I actually enlisted a friend of mine to illustrate a wishbone logo for me, which there's a lot of symbolism in. It's a wishbone and then it has some rhododendron flowers and like some pine tree branches, I guess. And the symbolism behind the wishbone, besides obviously being good luck, which I would love to have in my business, is just like a super personal behind the scenes thing of my entire life, like literally since I've been born until this last year, and I will probably do it again here in a few months in November. My grandpa always saves the wishbone from the Thanksgiving turkey, and then we dry it out and do, I don't know, maybe this is weird, maybe other people don't do this, but then we each grab one end of it and we split it, and whoever gets the longer end like wins, and we're going to have good luck for the year. So that's just like a fun little nod to kind of my own personal story and something that's really important to me. And I love the like good luck aspect in business. And then the rhododendrons are the Washington State flower, which is where I'm from. And then the pine trees are obviously because I love being outdoors in the woods and the mountains. So that's a way for me to kind of bring in my personal story into my business, because it's just something that like doesn't get talked about a lot, but it is also a big part of my why. So I think from this rebrand, the lesson really is that branding is a lot more than visuals. So I did significantly change my visuals during this, but the bigger thing that changed was how I'm talking to my clients, what services I'm offering, how I'm working with them, my process, how I'm serving them. And all of that stuff kind of has to come before the design. So if you can't answer the question, who is this for? What do they need? Why does it matter? What does it change in their life? You're not ready for a visual rebrand. And then finally, very recently, like in the last 2 or maybe 3 months, I've done a really slight refresh. So to be clear, I did not hate my brand. I still really liked it. And I got tons of compliments on it, but I just kind of felt bored with it a little bit. And I know I just talked in a previous episode about don't rebrand when you're bored, but I did say a refresh when you're bored is fine. And so that's what I did. After living with it for a while, I just started to not love the primary green color that I had been using. It felt a little like dull and muddy to me. And I really had kind of always wished that it would be more blue, and just kind of felt like, well, it's fine. So it's not broke, don't fix it. And I finally felt ready to fix it. So I changed from like a dark green color as my primary to more of a dark blue color, kept most of the other colors the same, but then I also incorporated a red/pink and then a purple accent. The big like pain point here for me was that I just was feeling like not very inspired visually whenever it came to creating content for my brand. And I also felt a little limited by my color palette. So previously I had basically some blues and some greens and like a yellow. And I felt like I wanted some more accent colors and just to add like a little more fun and personality. So by adding that purple and red color was how I was able to do that without having a huge departure where all of a sudden everything looks different and nobody can recognize my work. I also didn't do like a huge announcement around this one. I wasn't like, hey, everybody check out my new brand. I just kind of slowly tweaked some things and let it kind of evolve on its own. And I did get a few people who noticed, but for the most part, it wasn't such a huge shock that people were like confused. And I think that's important when we're doing a refresh, is to not be too jarring to our audience, right? And so now my brand feels great. I love creating content. I love putting together like opt-ins, and I just did a new service guide, social content, whatever. It feels fun and like there's some new life into it, and I didn't change a lot. So that's the big lesson here, is that not everything needs a full reinvention, right? Sometimes it's literally changing a few colors. I tweaked one of my fonts just a tiny bit. You would probably not even notice, but I notice. And those tiny, tiny, tiny edits can really breathe new life into your brand and get you excited about marketing your business and putting your brand out into the world again. So I want to kind of circle back here to, we talked a lot about like how my visuals changed and a little bit of how my messaging changed through all of these brand evolutions. But what also changed here was my offers, right? And that is a very, very natural evolution in business, to start out from doing any design for anything. I designed labels for a hot sauce company. I did like a catalog for like kids ballet clothes. I did this is a really sweet story. I did a book of quotes from this gentleman who had passed away that his family wanted to give away at his memorial service as like a keepsake. It was kind of a cool thing to work on, but like literally anything. And through doing all the things is how I learned, okay, I really am passionate about branding and brand strategy and website design, and that's where I want to narrow in. And my brand had to evolve alongside me to kind of take that journey and niche down in that way. You cannot separate your brand and your business model, right? If you do, your life is going to be hard. They grow together. And I hope that this was a good illustration of kind of how that happens. So I'm not saying that every time your offers shift, your brand needs to completely reinvent itself, but probably if you're shifting your offers semi-significantly, at least your messaging needs to change, or maybe your visuals need to get updated a little bit, or the way you talk about things, or what have you. So ask yourself, does your brand really match the work that you are actually doing right now, or is it based on the work that you were doing 2 years ago? As far as takeaways that I've learned of rebranding, I don't even know how many times that was, like 4-ish times. I would say that I wouldn't never outsource branding again. I enjoy doing it myself. There's probably a scenario in which I would hire somebody to do it for me, but I would make sure that we start with strategy. And I know that I'm beating a dead horse here, but I would not pay somebody to design a brand for me that was just asking me, what do I want? And building something that Morgan wants, because that's not going to serve my business. I also think that the hardest part isn't really the visuals. It is, especially if you're not a designer and you're thinking, I have no idea what colors to go together. That's the most tangible part, but I think the harder part is really staying in alignment with who you are and who you want to serve and how you want to show up in the world as your business is growing and evolving, and then figuring out, okay, how does that look visually? And I think that holding my own boundary of we have to focus on strategy first has been hard, right? Like I get clients that come to me and say, well, I just want the design. Can't we just start there? And I don't like turning them away or telling them no, but I also know through experience and through all of these evolutions in my business that it's not going to work if we don't do the strategy first. And I know that because I've done it in my own business and it hasn't worked. And I've done it for clients and it hasn't worked. So that's a big kind of, in retrospect, thing that I've kind of learned through all of this. And I think the final thought here, which might be unsettling to learn, is that branding is never done, right? Your business is always going to keep evolving and your brand should always keep evolving along with it. But the big but here is if you start with a really rock solid strategic foundation, that won't feel very difficult. So for example, my last little mini refresh I did with the blue color and the purples and the reds and stuff, I did that in like half a day. It didn't feel like a ton of work. It was fun and easy and enjoyable because I was really clear on my strategy and who I serve and what my message is. And I knew that making those little visual tweaks was going to help my brand appeal to them even more and feel a little more like this quote new version of me. And I wasn't trying to like start from scratch and build everything from the ground up. So just a reminder that you don't really need a massive overhaul to have a standout brand. Maybe you do, but not always. Really what you need is alignment and strategy and trusting yourself and just letting things evolve naturally. Your brand and your business evolving means that you're growing, and that is what we want to see. So if you are looking for support in any of this stuff, check out the show notes. You can grab the Standout Brand Foundations workbook if you kind of want to just dive into some strategy yourself, or you can book a Standout Brand Strategy session, and I will go through that process with you. Thanks for tuning in to the Six Figure Brand Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to rate the show and leave a review on whatever app you're listening on. And as a thank you, I'll send you coffee on me. Yes, I'm serious. As a smaller show for now, you taking the time to do this makes a huge impact on how we can reach more people and how I can continue to create this content for free. When you take a screenshot of your review, follow and tag me on Instagram at @SpectandCo. I'll send you a $5 Starbucks gift card. As always, don't forget to check out the show notes for any links or resources I mentioned during the episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week.